Hello and welcome back to Dave's Deadlines. It's a new year, a new jacket and a new series of erstwhile railway adventures for us to share together. We're back at Deepcar today, which you might remember from last year when we began our journey along the Woodhead line. But however, today we are visiting the line that turned off left. This overgrown track behind me is a former branch to the one-time magnificent Samuel Fox Steelworks at Stocksbridge, a small town on the very northern lip of Sheffield. While we stroll along enjoying the winter morning sun, with our line still next to us, here's a few facts to get us started for the day. Fox bought a cotton mill in the town in 1842, which he set up shop in as a wire industry. In time it developed into a steel making business, and obviously, as his empire expanded by the 1870s, he had to as well. Hence the Stocksbridge Railway branch, which opened in 1877, enabling Fox to connect his produce to the mainline railways and eventually onwards to the rest of the country. The track along this entire branch, however, has sat abandoned and mothballed since 2022, which is probably more than what you can say for the steelworks itself nowadays. At least I can enjoy a cup a while out though. How insensitive of you, going out and enjoying yourself like that when you know full well I'm bedridden at the moment. Picking up where we left off before coffee beckoned, the Stocksbridge branch, which runs along to the other side of me now, received parliamentary approval in 1874 and opened for business 3 years after, with its operating company being co-directed by Fox himself, plus James Halliday and Henry Unwin. However, it turned out, as the century progressed and the steel industry thrived, that this wasn't the only piece of train set that Sammy Boy is going to need to build. For just along the road, a couple of tasty looking reservoirs were about to take shape as well. The two sites at Underbank, and more specifically Langsett, required a further couple of miles worth of track to be built beyond Stocksbridge. And as we force ourselves up this tortuous climb from Fox Valley Retail Park, we find ourselves heading on towards the feature attraction of this video, which actually begins down the side of Underbank Lane here. Look just in front of you and you can make out a couple of parapets. The track bed that starts the Langsett line coming towards us here from Stocksbridge in the distance, somewhat cloaked by the glare of the sunlight, and shoot across the road here. You can see where it continues, marked out where that pipe is now, and somewhere right ahead, eventually crossing underneath the Stocksbridge bypass, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, well, I'm down below the bridge now, and big new year, we have to begin with tradition. One last sorry look at the site of Samuel Fox's, or probably later Chorus's, immense steel empire before we leave. The railway cutting leading up to the bridge is just over on our left there. I can't budge any further left myself because there's a steel gate post in the way. Sorry. Just over on our right here, as we come to the top and cross over the Stocksbridge bypass, that pipe we saw on the railway cutting comes out to meet us from this little tunnel we can just see through there in the trees. You might need your glasses. Quite obviously to feed Underbank Reservoir, which is just here on our left, and I think we're going to have a quick look at it. first of the two big water bowls, as I've mentioned, aided by the railway's construction. Pulling away from that once again, and then having to fight away past cars and lorries over the Stocksbridge bypass, and we finally ascend upon our feature attraction. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Langsett Railway path, which can be identified by this lovely little sign on a post straight in front of us. Took a little bit of time reaching it, but we got there in the end as always, didn't we? So let's enjoy. Returning to Trivia Corner again quickly. The Langsett Railway was constructed between 1896 and its opening in 1898 after Samuel Fox and the Sheffield Corporation mucked together. The railway was routed through the Fox Works, and this actually forced the Little Don River to be realigned slightly further to one side. The building of the route was actually broken into two sets of people in terms of who made it, who constructed it. Excuse my sloppy English. Fowler and Marshall, a couple of contractors, took care of the portion running through Stocksbridge and onwards to the bridge we went under just a bit ago, while what we're walking on now was the work of company labourers. What I find more interesting is that the deep car to Stocksbridge portion was not funded simply by a case of Sam Fox getting his chequebook out, but by 3,300 different shareholders, each throwing a tenner in the pot, accumulating the £33,000 needed in that day to build it. That'll be about 3 or 4 million now, I reckon. Sorry, my mathematics of money, it's not up to scratch. Still nice to see we have industry up at the side of us here, along this first little bit. A lovely modern greyish blue. Some lovely sun reflection down there on Underbank. Despite it only being a diddy little line, it does like to do its thing between embankments and cuttings, as we can see coming shortly. We saw quite a bit of that on the Lancaster to Caton line last year as well, didn't we? I'm pretty stumped as to how it's going to fit it all in, really. I think this first cutting in question is just coming to us now. Appearances can be so deceptive. That is one impressive silhouette that tree is giving us though, isn't it? This line does more or less follow the route of the road close by, for nearly all of its length, although widens away a slight bit towards the end. So don't expect anything too sharp in terms of turns and corners. And the Stocksbridge bypass has obviously straightened out at this point as well, because we have again. As you guessed, quite rightly, we're looking down at the more recently laid all-weather surface. Well, I'm supposed to understand it's all-weather. I've cycled it a few times in the last 2 or 3 years since I found out it had been placed down. And I never went sliding anywhere. Whether that's just because of the tread of my tyres is open to debate. We have what looks like old sleepers on the left here. Obviously for safety in one way, because it is a pretty narrow embankment. There's a single track line, but interestingly, 2 different gauges. The full mainline standard gauge, what you're used to seeing today, and a 3-foot gauge, all within one single track. The whole line was mostly worked by one single locomotive, appropriately named Langsett. You know, I've got so distracted talking there, I've ended up wondering if that cutting I was telling you about just now. And unusually, right behind it, we're out on the cliffside again. And more of these recycled sleeper-like things. Worry ye not, though, because another and much bigger cutting comes up about 100 yards in front. And coming up right behind that, a lovely wall of holly hiding the trees away. Nearly. From a distance, I can mistake that for an old signal. My eyesight being as shocking as it is. We have what might be an old staircase or an old piece of reinforcement structure here. Seems someone's got their own little personal gate there. No public rights of way. Is there public left of way though, maybe? This is the way you simply cannot escape the sunlight. And it's interesting, attractive line it makes. That's actually the shadow of the fence on my left, of course. Just before you ask me whether or not we're going to see any more bridges for this one, well, of course we are. This one's the one that's had the most work done on it since I first came. It's now not only tarmacked, but some tougher parapet on it as well. Even if I prefer the authenticity of a stone parapet, safety does come first. We've got a very uneven cutting here either side of me, about 1.5 meters on that side and about 15 meters on that side. If you're only just coming halfway through this video, that means that it's going around the side of a hill. And we have a second bridge shortly in front too. Ooh, quite a few trees to dodge around here. I take it such chicanes didn't quite yet exist in the railway's time. Mostly silver birches that you get on disused railway lines, and they do know how to shoot up in good time. A miniature railway laid here today might have some good fun actually. A wild winding embankment here in its own little right. What fascinates me is this drainage channel down here on the left. A landmark of my journeys along this route. I believe it does rise up further along to level with the railway. We reach what I thought was a bridge once, but isn't. Whichever way, I love to keep a log on all of these little things I see. So guys, sorry I let you down with another bridge there. That wasn't to be in the end. But here's one more cutting instead. Oh, and what should lie behind it? But our elusive next bridge. If you hark back to the Poolsbrook to Clown Railway I did almost this time a year ago, you might remember that the modern steel parapets they had on some of the bridges approaching Creswell were pretty much a similar design to that one, albeit with a paint job. Pause away for the classy appearance of these old railways, I know, but as I mentioned back earlier on the other bridge, safety is paramount, even of explorers, let alone trains. Time to take a quick look back. Would have been better before I came around the corner, but time to look forward again now, because yet another bridge lurks straight behind that last. Enjoy one last stretch of embankment before we reach this gate. You may notice it dips down a little bit just in front. Maybe subsidence over the years, or the usual prank when they lay these railway paths. You'll be seeing that plenty of times in the future on my videos, don't worry. It's one of my pet hates as well. Water, water. But you're thinking I'm drinking that, mate. You've certainly got another thing coming. Another quick dip. We arrive down on the farm. Not sure if a Yorkshire-based farmer would approve of that kind of impression. Just going to have to break off here, guys, while I cross this bit, because I don't want to be ambushed by any farmyard dogs who take a dislike to me walking through their grounds. Excuse me if it looks like a cowardly thing to do. Come up on some impressive modern farm machinery here, or the front of an impressive modern farming machine. Sorry about another mistake there, if you can bail me out on that one. Perhaps I could consider a trailer for my next video. Coming up to the last bit of the railway, but with the best bit awaiting right at the end. If these gates let me by. Some lovely hills to look at while we stop for a moment. Shame about the pylon. But not so much about the sun. Well, these gates are as permissive as I hope they'll be. So let's be heading on our way. And the final hurrah. And a lovely smattering of frost on the floor all around us. It's not a cutting yet, and that's not a tunnel in front. It's just some very cunningly positioned trees. A good warm up for what comes at the end. Another gate. Ooh, a little stream as well. And to a bit more of this lovely frost. Let's get one last look back at where we've just walked before we head finally into the depths. Into the depths we do set. So I just tripped over a bramble there, if you wonder what that sudden stop was for a few seconds. And lurking in the shadow of the sun straight in front now, our last bridge for the day, or tunnel, delete as appropriate. Time for some full steam ahead. Choo choo! And right up this horrendously steep slope straight behind, which I can't even see a 1-inch gauge model railway being applied to, let alone a 3-foot narrow gauge industrial one. Rambling straight up the trees behind it to road level again, we reach the other main reason for this railway's construction. The wonderful Langsett Reservoir. And its attractive tower. Looking back at where we've just come from, it's difficult to conceive that the railway that ended just somewhere around the other end of that water treatment plant on the other side ended its serviceable life as far back as 1912. The same year some great big ship sank as well, I believe. Just to finish on a more accurate note, construction work on the reservoirs actually wrapped up in 1907. Although the railway continued in use until 1912 for chalk wagon trains. Anyway, with the sun setting on today's exploration, it's time for me to be heading back to Stocksbridge and finding a bus stop. So, thanks for joining me on today's adventure. Our next one will see us visiting the former Bamford to Howden line in Derbyshire, which coincidentally was also built to serve a reservoir. In the meantime, if you're still stuck with New Year's resolutions, how about subscribing to the channel? That should keep you occupied for a bit, shouldn't it? Ta-da!